Welcome to the No Limits Leadership Podcast. We discuss ancient wisdom, real-world experiences, and the latest concepts on mastering leadership of self and others. If you're committed to maximizing your life and your impact on the world, you're home. Welcome to the No Limits Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Sean Patton, and I'm very excited to have Alex Ramos, a retired lieutenant colonel with over 20 years of distinguished service in the U.S. Air Force. He's the founder of Lead Without Fear, a renowned keynote speaker dedicated to revitalizing leadership by fostering profound employee engagement. He's got an awesome story. He was born in a military family in Torrejon Air Base in Madrid, Spain. I should make a note that I almost failed out of West Point from intermediate Spanish, so I probably butchered that. But, hey, was I close, Alex? Was I close?
That was really good. You can roll your R's. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's about all I've got from 4.5 years of Spanish in my life. Your upbringing is still values of service, character, and authenticity. And I said, awesome career. He held pivotal roles as a behavioral scientist, aerospace physiologist, and squadron commander, providing human performance instruction to elite units, including Special Operations Forces and Air Force One aircrew. Leveraging his extensive experience in training, Alex now empowers leaders to become their mission's voice, connecting teams to their mission on a personal level and reigniting the joy in leadership. Alex, welcome, brother.
Hey, it's an honor and privilege to be on No Limits Leadership Podcast. And I really appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to diving right in. Like I said, I digest and really study your material, all your newsletters, everything you post on LinkedIn, and obviously, the relationship that we've built with together through our speaking programs and so forth. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for saying Torrejon. Because I'm Alejandro Ramos, right?
Yeah.
But when I would go to places and they can't roll their R's, so I was like, just call me Alex and it's fine. I got all kinds of stuff. Alejandro, I was like, all right, look, Alex is fine. So if I was your professor, I would have given you an A.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Thank you, dude. It's a crazy story. When I went to West Point, we have to take a year of language. And because my major was cultural geography, and believe it or not, so I had to take an extra semester. And I had taken 2 years, sort of the obligatory 2 years of Spanish. And one of my biggest regrets in high school was I didn't take it seriously. And so, I basically learned no words and just did good enough on grammar to pass. And then 4 years later, I'm going into my junior year at West Point. You have to take a language. And so I'm like, I'll take Spanish, beginning Spanish. I can handle beginning Spanish. Well, you've already had 2 years of Spanish. So they put me in intermediate Spanish. And I show up to, class, and I mean, it's been 4 years, and I literally know nothing, right? I'm nothing. I'm a white kid from Kansas, right? I'm nothing. And I show up, and I walk in, and my professor is the Mexican foreign exchange officer who speaks less English than I do Spanish, and from day one just start talking to us. And in my case, talking at me in Spanish. And I'm just like, oh, crap. My heart just drops, bro. And so I think it was my lowest grade at West Point by far. It was a C-. I barely passed. And then I convinced them after one semester to move me over to beginning Portuguese. And that's how I graduated from West Point, was switching from Spanish to Portuguese.
Nice.
But since then, I've tried. So I appreciate, anyway, that's my journey through Spanish. And now my wife is fluent, so we travel. I just do my best, and then she cleans up my mess.
I love it. So that's good. So you adjusted fire appropriately. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that, I'm sure if you go somewhere and there's his name's Alex Ramos, as opposed to Alejandro Ramos. It sounds so much more powerful, bro.
That's right.
Oh my God, dude. I love it too. And dude, you've got such a cool story. You have a very interesting, right? From being a grunt in the Army and then, being in Special Forces, the Air Force and even Navy world, I think in a lot of ways is so much more, or so many more members of those services are it's so much more technical, right? I mean, you've got, I've got, as a, young officer, I had 40 dudes with machine guns, but an officer stepping into, combat in the Air Force, you've got a $1 billion jet, right? It's just a different mindset. And you had, so what was your role, I guess primarily in terms of human performance and executing the mission in the Air Force? Kind of explain to me more.
No, absolutely. And actually, it has a lot to do with you. It has to do with the warfighter, the front line. So, for example, anybody who was going to fly in an aircraft, air crew, doesn't matter if you're a flight attendant on presidential support missions, if you're going to be a fighter pilot, helicopter, tanker, transport, or high altitude parachutist, you jump from aircraft, right? And you do halo, hey-ho operations, you're on consoles, you're on oxygen. You will go through aerospace physiology training. You will go through the altitude chamber or now the reduced oxygen breathing device. And all that does is it helps you get hypoxic, right? We have fun with you guys getting you hypoxic. And then we get to see you kind of try to figure out how to correct for yourselves, right? That's the most important thing. Just like when you fly on the airliner and they tell you to put the mask on first yourself, so that way you can help other people, because if not, you can be the one that's passed out depending on the situation. So that's what we would do. And then we'd put you through a rapid decompression so you can experience that in the altitude chamber. And then we would give you academics though. And I think this is where the heart in the career field for me in particular existed, was that 4-hour course, academic course. It dealt with self-imposed stresses, mission imposed stresses. It dealt with situational awareness, spatial disorientation. So you're really getting into, like you say, technical, right? But you might have 40 guys with machine guns, but the technical aspect, I say, of what happens in your brain as you perceive, comprehend, predict, decide, and act in a environment that continues to change and is uncertainty, I think you get an A on that.
Well, yeah, you're right. It is all mental. I'm always reminded of I think it was in the first Rambo, right? When he's just like, you told me my number one weapon was my mind, like that whole thing. And that's what I always like come back to is and it's true for all of us, right? And that's why we're both so passionate about mindset, and especially when it comes to leadership. But for for everyone else, because I know already, right? But like explain to everybody else and myself, like what is a aerospace physiologist?
Yeah, so an aerospace physiologist is one who really studies the human body at altitude. What happens when you're exposed to 10,000 feet, 50,000 feet? Also, though, you're looking at a lot of the human performance. So you're looking at human factors. What are some threats and errors that exist in your environment that you should be made aware of? Okay, so that you can then predict and decide how to operate in a particular environment. But we also have another responsibility, which is to investigate accidents or mishaps. Probably the toughest part of my job was going out with a safety investigation board and investigating accidents and mishaps where there was a fatality. That's probably the hardest thing to work on. You've got 30 days to work with a team, usually led by a brigadier general. You've got your experts on board, and you're just gathering information. You're using your knowledge and experience, all the data, to try to figure out what went wrong, what happened. Then, of course, the most important part is to put together some recommendations that get implemented to help prevent that tragedy from happening again, or at least at a minimum inform, or even it could be engineering, it could be design, structure. Doesn't have to be a fatality. We're going to investigate depending on the cost and dollar amount. We're going to go ahead and investigate. So that was a very, I would say, demanding at times, but very rewarding because it gave meaning to what we did.
Based on your training and experiences there as leaders of any size organization, and a lot of my clients just for whatever reason tend to be, so I'm being selfish here, but are in the manufacturing and the healthcare space, right? Like two spaces where what you're talking about in safety is so important. So when you talk with leaders and they start looking sort of generically at how do they balance risk and safety mitigation versus, say, innovation and progress?
Well, I think one of the things that we would recommend. So number one, most people think of an accident or an incident and they want to blame the individual. It was Alex's fault. He made a mistake.
It was Alex, not Alejandro. Alejandro doesn't make mistakes like that.
Alejandro he's good, right? Alex should have listened to Alejandro. But so Alex makes this mistake. And then typically we say, oh, it could be a skill-based error, right? Or in worst case scenario, it's a violation. Like you knew you were doing something wrong and you still did it. Those are cases where you got to more than likely remove the individual, because you're talking about character, you're talking about integrity, you're talking about some other things. So, but if it's not, it's an honest error, it's a mistake. So we have to study that. And so what we want to tell leaders is we can't stop at the acts level where something happened. Like you have to keep digging to understand how it happened, like latent factors, precursors, preconditions. An example would be, our training programs were inadequate. Maybe our resources were inadequate. We didn't put enough. We're limited on how many people we had, and we were putting too many demands on them. And they were telling us about it, but we didn't listen. We were pushing the bottom line, and it's hard for leaders to face that reality when they look in the mirror and say, "Oh my gosh, like that? You mean I contributed to that?" We contributed as an organization to this by either A, we weren't aware of what was happening, or we were aware and we just let it go. Like we're kind of routine violations as well. We're like, hey, we always do it this way. We know it's not safe, but we always do it that way. So we're going to keep doing it this way. But ultimately, what I really appreciated about what we used, it was a human factors analysis and classification system, which allowed us to look from the incident all the way up to the organizational level of type of influences that may have contributed to the mishap.
That's very interesting, and I think that's it's very interesting being coming from the military and then working with civilian companies. I have my own businesses that there's this. It's just a severity in some sense, right? In the military, not in some sense, in a real sense, the severity sometimes in the military is so extreme that it leads to extreme training. It leads to maybe also in a good way, like a strong emphasis on SOP, a strong emphasis on doing things the right way, on analyzing it and assessing risk, and sometimes in the business world, right? It's not necessarily maybe life or death, and so we don't apply the same tools, but the consequences are just different. Like you mentioned, what percentage do you think of middle managers and any across the board you talk to would say they've got too much on their plate to do quality work? Like 90%, 80%, like
a lot of them. And
coaching
middle managers is that, to me, the reason why I really enjoy coaching middle managers, all levels are great, is they're in a tough position, right? So depending on the leadership, so when you look at the C-suite, you look at CEOs, you look at those that are pushing and trying to find more business and grow and expand, okay? And then their middle managers like, okay, we're growing fast and we're moving, and they're trying to keep up. What's interesting to me is that level of awareness of, well, they have to execute. It's hard for them to complain to their workers because they don't want to feel like they're talking bad about, okay, they want to execute the vision. They want to move in that direction. Some don't even know the vision. They're just working hard. They don't even know where they're going. They just know they're growing. They're expanding. There's a lot of turnover at times because of that as well. So it is very demanding on that middle manager to if you want to innovate, like you were talking about earlier, and you want to really get after certain issues, sometimes they feel like they just don't have the time to do it. So it really, this is all leadership. Safety is leadership. It's the bottom line. The way the leader thinks, feels, the way their values, their beliefs, how they speak about it, whether they act the way they act on what they actually say, like they actually do what they say, is a whole nother story. They're going to adopt whatever they do, right? Whatever that leader does.
Not what they say, right? They're going to adopt what they do, not what they say.
She just like, yes, okay, well, I guess it's cool for us to do it, right? Or they don't really believe in it. And I think that's one of the key things here when it comes to safety or any leadership is, can you create belief in somebody, right? Where you are moving in the right direction. And maybe you are adopting a little bit more risk, but you're mitigating it. At least you recognize it and you perceive it, and you're empowering your people to mitigate it. An example would be like, we need to stop. Like we need a timeout. And you as a leader, I go to you and you're like, Sean, we need a timeout. Like, listen, here are the threats that exist right now. Here are the 2 errors that just occurred. We just need a timeout. This is what I think we can do. And you can say, okay, let's do it. Or you can be like, no, we need to push, figure it out. What's the balance there, right? So it really does. I always say this to leaders when they're like, well, how am I supposed to make this decision or what this judgment call? And I was like, there's 3 things you need. You need information, knowledge, and experience. Information, knowledge, and experience. Do you have the right information to make the right call? Do you understand the information? Do you comprehend it? Do you have the knowledge to digest it and really know what the true threat is here? What you're adopting as far as the risk goes? Do you have the experience to know, like, man, whoa, I've seen this before. We need to stop. And then the people that are giving you that information, right? Do they have the knowledge and experience to communicate it in a way where you see the severity of it, right? And that gives you the opportunity to act.
What's the difference between information and knowledge?
Yeah. So information is out there. Like, for example, information is data that's coming in, right? So if I could take that and to turn it something useful where I can do something with it, to me, that becomes knowledge. Because now that information is something I can actually use for something, right? I'll give you an example. If you show me a bunch of like calculus or some equations that I haven't done, you may give me all this information. You may give me certain tactics, techniques, procedures. You may give me some business rules, some things that it's information for me, but I don't really have the knowledge base to digest that. And I may not have a mentor, somebody to walk me through it to turn it into knowledge so then I can use it for my team, right? So just because we give somebody some information, it doesn't mean that A, they have the knowledge to comprehend it, or B, they may not have the ability to take that information and turn it into knowledge so they can use it, right? So that's the big difference that I've seen.
Cool. I'm going to start going like rapid fire because I've got a lot of stuff I want to get to. What was the biggest difference for you as a leader going from, say, like in a captain level, right, with a few soldiers as a younger officer, to when you stepped in as a squadron commander, which is more like an operational level leader, right? Like what, as you transition from that, yeah, like what was the difference for you leading basically, civilians, be like smaller teams, maybe like manager, senior manager, and then when you moved up to that higher level, essentially middle management or junior executive level as a squadron commander?
Well, some of the biggest, and I mean, obviously you're a commander, it's obviously you have UCMJ, you have a lot of other heavier responsibilities and authority when you're in those types of positions. But when I was a captain, I mean, you got to think about, I'm still trying to master my craft. I'm 4 years in, and then, of course, then you get to 10 years, maybe put on major or what have you, but you're more of this tactical level. You're learning to lead. You're learning a lot about yourself. You're learning a lot about other people. You're in the mix. Like you're fire hose sometimes, right? So the thing is I'm listening to my squadron commander. I'm listening to my group commander. I'm listening to those senior leaders give me information where I have to be in alignment with them and I have to execute at that tactical level, right? So there's a big difference because now, right, I may have a small team. I can connect with them daily. I can speak to them daily, but now I've got, you've got 130 plus permanent party, right? Like in my case, I had instructors, and then I had over 300 students that just got out of boot camp and they were going through their first specialty training courses. And I had 14 of them, right? So 14 courses, over 300 students on the campus at one time, plus all the other commanders that had students. So we had over 1,000 students. Plus it was at the Medical Education Training Campus in Fort Sam Houston, which is joint. So it's just, there's a lot going on there. And as a squadron commander, my job was to take this strategy, right? And you're a little bit higher up in the strategy realm, and I have to know that, and I have to execute that, right? I have to make sure that the team understands it, believes in it, adopts it, really engraves it in their hearts, and then that they're executing, because I can't talk to them every day. I can't oversee that every day. So it's a big, big difference. But as a commander, no matter where you are, you do have to make time to see your people.
And so if there's people listening right now that are in that sort of senior tactical level role, again, maybe they're a senior manager, director type level where they're still focused on, like, they've got pretty clear instructions and it's about execution. And they're looking at, or they recently are moving up a little higher in the org where it's more of a cross-functional role. I would call more of an operational level role that's trying to take a larger, maybe more like opaque or complex strategy, and then be able to turn that into clear instruction to tactical level leaders. Because in the military, we're lucky in the sense that we have the ability to, pull people out of the line and be like, all right, your next job is this, and then we're going to train you for that job. Then we can plug you back in. Virtually no one does that unless you're in a very large company where they can afford to pull you out, train you, and pull you back in the next level. And so, that's why people like you and I, have jobs and can play such a big role, is like helping leaders as they move up, because they're not getting a ton of training. So like, my question would be, for that person who's moving from that sort of maybe just like leaders of leaders, tactical level leader, and they're moving up to maybe, well, in some cases might be like a VP, junior VP type level, and they're not getting maybe the training themselves. What sort of skill sets, mindset differences, like what would you tell them to prepare for that jump in responsibility?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think you could do a whole podcast on this because, I think this is what I believe. First off, I'm really big on defining the terms. Let's define terms. So leadership, right? So if we're saying that this VP is going to have this leadership role, well, what does leadership even mean? So I subscribe to the common definition that I'm sure you've heard many, many times over and over, which is leadership is the ability to inspire and influence oneself or individuals, right, to achieve a common goal or task. I got it. But this is what is your podcast called again? No Limits, right?
Limits Leadership. Yeah. That's
so
right.
let's not limit to that. Let's not limit it to that. In fact, just recently I was challenged on this whole leadership thing, because I do believe that leadership is influence, but I think the seed to influence is inspiration. I want the people to believe. You got to create, as a VP, any leader, in fact, in any organization, wherever you are. So all your listeners, it doesn't matter where you are, even as an informal leader, if you can create belief in the mission and it's meaningful and you feel that mission and it elicits emotion, which makes you care about it, that's your job. It's part of your job description. I don't think we talk about this a lot. Leadership is, in fact, this is No Limits. We're going to go here, okay? If it's all right with you, Sean.
Okay. That's we'll go wherever you want, brother.
We'll go. To me, leadership, it's a spiritual journey. It's a spiritual journey. Now, because we're defining the terms, I'm gonna share this with you, okay? What is a spiritual journey? And I'm just going to read it as I looked it up. A spiritual journey refers to a personal exploration or process of self-discovery aimed at gaining a deeper understanding of oneself, one's purpose in life, and the world around them, often involving introspection, reflection, and seeking meaning. It's a continuous process of growth and evolution focused on the inner self. To me, if you think about the toughest times you faced as a leader, Sean, the toughest times, and then the most joyous of times, was it not a personal journey for you? Like, wasn't it something where you just felt like it's spiritual in nature? And we're not talking religion. We're just talking that energy that you feel. It's this reflection and introspection as far as like why I matter, why am I important in this role? What truly is my role as a leader? Yes, I got to deliver all these products and what have you. Yeah, that's my job. But for who and why? Right? Like, does it mean something to me? And I think one of the best things that those leaders can do in those positions, if you will, is go from communication, right, to connection. Start putting the meaning behind it and speak it in a way where your people believe. And now you don't have to watch anymore. You just check in because they know why they're doing that. And I used a couple of methods in command, if you want to hear about it. One in particular that was very, very. I use it now all the time. So
please
to help people to do that.
Now don't let me steal your role, dude. You're crushing it. Keep going.
All right. So listen. So here's something that I learned as a commander, right? So when I was a flight commander, so I was as a major at the time. I was at Andrews Air Force Base. This is where we're supporting presidential support, Air Force One, but also a lot of people come in for regional training. And I remember I was just thinking to myself, like, what do we really do here? What do we need the team to do? And so we would say, listen, I just need you to live by 6 simple words. Okay. We sat there, whiteboarded missions and visions, and you know how you do offsites and all this other stuff. And here I was a major doing this. Like, come on, man. I was like, no, let's just live by 6 simple words. And it was influence the warfighter, affect the fight. Okay. So as instructors, all I'm asking you to do is to use all of your strengths and challenge any weakness that you may have to get better so that you can influence the warfighter in the classroom. Give them the threats and errors. Give them all the information, the mishaps, the trends. Let them digest that so when they go out, they can affect the fight. But if we don't do that job, if we don't do it right, we're missing our piece of the puzzle. So when I took command, so now you remember talking about captain, major, and now you're moving up. So here I am with 14 different medical specialties and at a training squadron. And I'm thinking to myself, so Chief Burberk and I, superintendent, we're sitting there in the office, and then of course you got a first sergeant as well, and Nancy Horsey. And so we're like, how do we write a mission and a vision for 14, medical specialties, and we got so diverse. Biomedical equipment technicians, radiology, we've got physical therapy, laboratory, medical lab, like what? And I remembered being the flight commander, and I said, you know what? We're going to live by 6 simple words. That's all we're going to do. And so we came up with this term called the VisMis, the vision mission. Instead of having this long vision and long mission, we're like, you know what? 6 simple words. And it was inspire warrior medics, affect the fight. Inspire warrior medics. Everybody on this team walks out there every single day and inspires warrior medics, where that mindset is. Do you understand the role that you serve? Do you understand when you go down range and you're a medical laboratory, you don't think you're important? You know how quickly that doc needs those results? Your radiology, you know how quickly that doc needs those results? So I need you to inspire warrior-minded medics to affect the fight. And the thing that I absolutely love, Sean, about this is when you walk around campus and you see your team, and if I say inspire warrior medics, you know what they would say back? Affect the fight. And it became our culture. It became part of our DNA. It was engraved in our hearts. And to me, that is one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader. Do you have that 6 simple words, that simple mantra statement that when you say it to somebody, it resonates in their heart and soul? Like they know why they exist. They know why they matter. Now go do the offsite and do your long mission vision stuff that nobody remembers. Okay. Nobody really does, but maybe you need it for other reasons. Okay. At a C-suite level, that's okay. And what we would do is if you come into the unit, you would sit down as you're onboarding and we would say, hey, you meet the commander, you meet the superintendent. We would meet them together and we'd say, hey, you live by 6 simple words here. Inspire warrior medics, affect the fight. And I would ask them, do you remember your mission at your previous station location? And they'd be like, well, we would do this. And I was like, no, word for word. Tell me what your mission was. Like, oh, I don't know. I was like, don't worry about it. We don't have that here. You don't have to memorize it. 6 simple words. You think you can do that? Yes, sir. We can do it. Inspire warrior medics. And they say, affect the fight.
So much goodness there. I love your emphasis on the simplicity, right? And that was, something that I honestly kind of relearn every time I do a new effort, or, my 2 words that sort of guided me as my mantra last year were simplicity and focus, because my own business model had gotten too complex. I was trying to do too much. I was like, you know what? I'm going to simplify. And when you simplify, you really flourish, right? When you simplify, you really empower, right? It gives your people that North Star and that clear direction that then they can sort of rally around, but also can make decisions, based on that. And, what I loved about what you said there was at both what I heard in both those 6-word mission statements, it was about, one of our doctrinal things in the military is always mission first, people always. Mm-hmm. And that's what I heard, right? The first part of that mission was always about taking care of your people, inspire people, or who they are, right? It's about the individual first. And then what are you pointing that at? Like, then what's the effect you're having? And I think that's a great takeaway, even if you're, an accounting firm or you're in manufacturing, healthcare, whatever, is like, if you can come up with your, mission vision statement or VisMis, come up with your VisMis and make it, and if you just think whatever we're doing with our people, it's empower, inspire, whatever, it's about the people. And then what are we pointing them at? I love that you can sort of break it down, that simple. And the last part of that I loved was, the purpose piece, right? Like if you think that you're going to get 120% out of your people to increase shareholder value, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Right. And so you've got to think in terms of like, how does this work matter and how does it impact other people? And I think a lot of business leaders struggle with that, but it doesn't have to be, it can be, how are you affecting the clients and their business outcomes? How are we impacting each other? Like, how are we making each other's lives better by the work we're doing? How are we impacting the families of the people that work for us and what we're doing for them? Like, there's so many other ways to create fulfillment and purpose in the work we do than strictly like a number on a financial statement.
100%. I say this to leaders when they're asking me, okay, how do I develop meaningful missions? Because there's purpose and there's meaning. And meaning drives emotions. what something means to you will drive your emotion. So when I remember, like when you would see you're the height of I never went to combat. I never served in environments like you did. My job was to prepare those that did in my specific small career field, right? And I felt a lot of guilt about that many, many times, right? I felt like, man, I've trained. I'll give you two examples, right? Now I get chills when I think about this and when I talk about it. But when I was in Okinawa, I'll give you an example. I was working with the 33rd Rescue Squadron, right? So HA-60s, PJs, and obviously the air crew. And I got to work with Captain Dave Wisniewski. He was a pilot, HA-60 rescue pilot, and he was such a go-getter. I remember I was teaching night vision goggles for them, refresher training and some initial training for some other groups. But so he comes over and he's like, "Hey, we got this new panoramic night vision goggles. You know what the four that got made famous with a particular operation?"
Yeah.
So anyways, so he's like, "Hey, we want to fly with these, but we don't have the ground training." I was like, "Wiz, I got you, man. Like I will build it, and that you do the flying portion, I'll do this portion." And sure enough, man, we spent time. We're just working and working and working. And finally, I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready." And he's like, "Good. So am I." So I go over to the squadron. It's just 1v1. I give him the ground training. He's like, "Got it. Good. Let's go fly." Right? Not that day, by the way. But so just to make it clear. Anyway, I'll never forget. I was like, "Well, I'm going with you." And they're like, "Okay, you can come with us." I would fly with them anyways, and mainly at night because I would do NVG training. So I want to be in their environment. And then I'd film through a PVS 14, a monocular with a camera, and I'd film night ops so that way I could put it in the classroom. So it'd be more relevant to them. But anyways, long story short, I remember him, he's going through his checks and I see the nogs up, and then if you go up in the air and he puts them down, I got panoramics as well. And I'm just loving it. There's some gunnery work going on, shooting. And anyways, we come back, and I don't know if you know this, but he was shot down in Afghanistan. He later passed away from his injuries. And actually, I have his bracelet here, this remembrance bracelet that I would wear. And I share this with you because, like, for me, it reminded me that everything that I did, no matter whether I was in a combat zone or not, it mattered. It had deep meaning. When I got into aerospace physiology, I didn't take a pilot flight out of college because I wanted to be an aerospace physiologist. I wanted to prevent mishaps because of a General Winfield S. Harp who was killed in an F-16 crash in the 80s. I wondered as a kid, why did he bail out? So I didn't realize there was this human factors, human performance career field that I can get after, right, and learn to help prevent that from happening. So you can imagine, like, when we lose people, and like you said, the civilian sector, sometimes it's not as it's life or death, but that's not the point. The point is to find the meaning behind what you do, like you said. Right? Find the meaning behind what you do. And I would say this to executives. I was like, charts don't have emotions. They don't have feelings. Numbers don't have feelings. Now show the numbers, but then show the family that benefited from this medical device, right? Show the person that's, this vehicle is safer because of whatever widget you developed, right? Show that regardless of what it is that you do, find the meaning that elicits an emotion in that individual where they feel like they matter and they're a part of something. People want to feel valued. They want to feel like they belong to something. And it's the leader's responsibility to do this. And this is how I try to get leaders to think about it. If you have a thread, I want you to thread it through all the hearts of your people. Just thread it, okay? And when times get tough, or your job is to pull that thread and everybody just, you're together now. You're together now. And nothing's going to stop you because that thread has a lot of meaning in it. And when you inject that meaning in the hearts of your people, they will roll in together. Now, there's a dark side to this we can get into if you want, but primarily it is such a great, I'd say, a tool to use is to figure out the meaning of what you do and learn to inject it and connect that with the people that you serve.
I couldn't agree more. And that type of communication, great leaders speak about that over and over and over again. And you said, inject it in the organization, and it's the first thing they talk about, and make sure and I don't see a lot of senior leaders, right? Like, well, they know, right? It's on the website, right? Or whatever, right? Like, it's not that they're not championing it and making sure, like you mentioned, it's in the hearts of everyone, and everyone is reciting it and they're thinking about it and connecting with that higher mission. Because I agree with you that, I was actually thinking about some reflection about last year and being able to really define even more like the North Star. I have a North Star for my life and business, like for the work I'm doing, right? For my own work. And what I came to was this underlying belief that everyone deserves inspiring leadership. It's almost a human right that everyone deserves to feel fulfillment in whatever, we can call it work, call it play, call it raising a family, like just our lives in general. And that can come from, and in some ways has to come from, leadership of others, right? We're tribal creatures and we're designed at a genetic level in our brains and our hearts and our spirits and everything to be a part of that community. And I have a firm belief that we only experience fulfillment by having a sense that we are impacting other people, not self-serving gratification. And so I love how you articulated that. And it speaks to even, work that I continue to do as I continue to try to improve my own mindset and perspective. Now, you mentioned there's a dark side to that. What's that?
Yeah. So the dark side is using it to where it can lead to burnout, where now what you're doing is you're saying, hey, we've got this meaningful mission, and you push your people too far. And you're basically saying, like, you're using that for like I said, it's the dark side. It's like, no, you're supposed to use it for good. There are times where you can say to your people, it's like, hey, look, people are depending on us, and we need, and they're like, oh my God, but we don't have the resources, or we don't have this, or we're trying, like, this is, someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to, or the turnover rate is too, we don't have the systems in place and the processes to really support the push, right? The surge, the accelerated way of doing business. So meaning is important to get people through those tough times, but it can also be used by a leader, right? And this is why it's a spiritual journey. You got to know why you're using that. Are you using it for good? Are you even aware that you're using it for good? Are you unaware that we're using that meaning to, maybe push somebody too far? Maybe what matters to somebody, and you're going to have to give them more projects because they're really good at it, and you don't want to have someone else that's a little bit slower, and you overload their plate now. Right. And you say, hey, you're the one keeping us going. Like, these people are getting this product, and you're leading the way. And now their family life is all, out of sorts. So this is why I really believe in that self-reflection, introspection for a leader. You got to take time out to think about how your leadership is impacting not just yourself, right? You got to take care of self, but others. And that has to be, that intentionality has to be followed by a deliberate practice in order to do that.
Absolutely. And it takes a commitment, which is to slow down, which I'm looking at the man in the mirror right now. That's my struggle, right? I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm a driver. And so it's like my work is to sometimes do nothing or just to sit and if you're wondering, you're like, wait a minute, is that me too? Just sitting down and doing nothing make your skin crawl, because for me, it really does. Like the thought, like just sitting there and like, all right, I'm not reading a book. I'm just going to sit and be for a moment.
Yeah.
Is one of the harder things to do for me, which is an indicator. And if that's you, that's an indicator that's where you need to be. That's the indicator that's a space you need to be in. I find a lot of leaders, high achievers, whatever you want to call them, are in that space. And then I hear that mission and I see that all the time, especially with senior leaders, especially with servant leader minded people, especially with people that are in some sort of caregiver or service role, whether that's clergy, I mentioned healthcare workers, coaches, parents, you just go on, like anyone whose focus is, usually in a good place, right? It's about, they are passionate about what they're doing and the impact, and people are dependent on our success. And it's just but to your point, they often will drive too hard on their people on that mission. Or I think you mentioned too, that self-leadership is they're the first ones that don't take care of themselves, aren't there. I mean, how many doctors or nurses and they're in healthcare and they're, 50 pounds overweight or 60 pounds overweight, and they're overstressed and they're not taking care of themselves. They're not eating right. And they're doing all the things they know are wrong, but they just have this like higher calling and not putting themselves first. And we can't lead others if we're not in a healthy space, right? Like we're never going to lead our team better than we can lead ourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes I've seen where you put so much emphasis on others because that's what leadership has been taught, right? It's been, you're taking care of the team, you're taking care of others, and then you can risk losing yourself. This is why I go back to the spiritual journey. This is more than that definition of inspire others and influence others, but it's influence and inspire oneself. And the way you feel about things, the way you feel about yourself, your history, your traumas, your values, your beliefs, your narratives, your story that you tell yourself every single day, those matter as how you feel as a human being. You can go out there and put your leader mask on all day, and you go home and you know why you're eating that. Like I remember when I used to, if I was down and out, but there's a bag of chips in the house, guess what's going to happen? Right? I'm going to Cookie Monster those things. You know what I mean? Like it's just knowing where that came from, doing the work, right? Having coaches, having therapists, having the courage to step into the arena where you're going to have to dig deep into your own heart and soul as far as why you are the way you are and who you are. That's where I think one of the best things the leader can do is you have to learn about you. And the more you learn about you, the more empathy you're going to have for others too, because you'll meet people where they are, and maybe you were there once. And you're not going to say, well, I was there once and I did this. You're just going to be like, man, I remember that emotion. I remember when I felt like I didn't want to get up. I remember when I just want to lay in my bed for hours upon hours, right? Maybe not Green Berets, but you know what I'm saying? Like, but there are people who do.
Yeah.
And then you just meet them there and you can have a little bit more empathy than just say, get after it, let's go. And I'll share this with you. Have you read Extreme Ownership, right? Jocko Willink. Right. He came out with a dichotomy of leadership. Why did he come out with that other book? Because you can't just be like extreme ownership. Let's go. It's like, wait, time out. There's a dichotomy, right? There's two sides to this. And so I think the more you look at yourself and within, the better you can be that type of leader for everyone else.
I think you have to, right? I think you're the limiting, my business coach, one of his famous phrases works with entrepreneurs is income improvement follows self-improvement. But I think the same, concept applies, right? That you never, like I said, you're never going to lead your team better than you lead yourself. Like you're as a leader, whether that's, your family, your community, your small team, or, a 5,000 or 20,000 person company, that you are the limiting variable for your company, for your organization, for whoever you're trying to lead. And so we've got to put time into that. And I think that's a key part of leadership. And I'm wondering, before we started recording, we were talking about how you worked with Air Force One and, how that unit in particular was like such a high performing, like in cultural environment. Can you tell me what that was like?
Yeah. So I'm sitting in my office and I get this phone call and it's like, hey, you teach crew resource management? And I was like, yes, I do. And I said, okay, what do you need? It's like, well, we need training this week. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't have a class this week, but I can see what other dates we have available. And you tell me. And there's like, oh, no. This is with the Air Force One crew out here. And I was like, oh, so wait, what? Who? So I knew they were there. You see them fly. You're at Andrews, and I'd work with the presidential support, aircraft over there and do some training. That's how the word got out for our CRM program, crew resource management. And I said, okay. However, like I like to tailor our training, and I want to know, like, hey, make sure we're providing something that's not generic. So that would require a visit, right? So I was like, can I bring a couple people with me? So they're like, sure, why not? So we go over there, we go through the whole process, and we get to learn a little bit about, get a tour of Air Force One, where the air crew are sitting, the flight attendants, and it's an incredible operation. But the thing that stands out to me the most, number one is the level of discipline and commitment to excellence. Because if you think about the mission, and this is where I just keep going back to the meaningful mission. if you go back to Air Force One and it's like, okay, so you're going to go provide some human factor CRM stuff to Air Force One. Where do you even get info from that? Like, where do you even get trends and analyses from? It's not like they're reporting everything that happens. It's just, so you have to look at human performance in general, other civil aviation type of proactive safety information that you can use. But ultimately, you go there and you just see the professionalism, the commitment, the desire to be the very best because they know what they represent. God forbid we ever lose in Air Force One. Think about the level of responsibility. The missions that they would have, the short missions were the toughest ones for them, wheels up, wheels down type of things. It wasn't the long haul ones, right? So we had to learn and understand their environment so we can provide the best information that we had available to them. It wasn't filled, check the box off, okay, CRM. Some places are like that. Faster, funnier, let's go, I'm out, right? But this is where that meaning comes in. So just the honor to have that opportunity to witness the excellence, right, from every single person, to meeting the commander, right? They treated you like one of their own. To me, when you walk into an organization and your people, from regardless, from the front office, the front staff, all the way to a commander or C-suite leader, treats you like one of their own and welcomes you that way, that's culture, right? That takes time to build, and I'm sure they built it over the time, but over the years. But man, to me, that was one of my favorite memories is working with the crew there.
Man, this has been awesome. You and I have in the past and could go for another hour or two, but you're doing fantastic work, speaker, coaching, all that. Like, what we haven't even gone into, the work you did or work you do. So, tell me a little bit more about your business and how you're helping leaders.
Yeah. So lead without fear. And I think it's not about not having fear. Fear exists. It's just not leading with it at the forefront. Right. So what I do when I coach or even when I speak, the way that I do the speaking engagements is, and see the gladiator helmet behind me? That's the actual helmet that I bring when we go out and speak. And, people come up on stage and they have to raise that helmet. They'll be like, oh. And what I've found is we talk a lot about this lead without fear, but there are people who are afraid to get up on stage. There's this inner voice. There's something telling them, no, I can't. I'm not. I'll look this certain way. People will think, they'll think that. And as a coach and as a speaker, I want to break down those barriers. I want them to practice courage. Everything great in this world that's ever occurred is due to courage. Tell me anything that isn't something that has changed someone's life or changed the world in some way. It started with the courage to do something, the courage to speak up, the courage to act. And so when we go out there and we speak, it really is about breaking those barriers and understanding who you are, this inner voice, the things that are stopping you from doing the things that you want to do with your life, becoming the person that you desire and you imagine every single day. We're going to learn to break down those barriers, to bring meaning into your life, into your mission, to inject that into your people. And when they go up there, I promise you that if you watch some videos, they go in there kind of shy, kind of, oh, this is crazy. What am I doing? And then they raise that helmet and their whole physiology changes. Now they're smiling. Now they walk proud. And it's like, that's the level of leadership that people want and are looking for. And that's what you need to deliver as a leader. And so when we coach, we teach leaders how to do that, right? But it's not really how to teach it. It's they already know, or there's already something existing within them, that inner critic, or that, you have the inner critic, inner coach, you have the ego, you have all these things that are involved. And through questioning, right? Through this self-awareness exercise, we break those down so they can figure out, wow, I do have this ability. I do have this ability to do this. Or I should find somebody within my organization who has the ability and wants to do this and is excited to do it. And I'm going to have them lead that effort, right? So the speaking and the coaching goes hand in hand. But to me, you mentioned something earlier, and I think this is really powerful. I used to tell leaders this, that everybody deserves the opportunity to experience the joy of leadership. Everyone deserves the opportunity to experience the joy of leadership. And everyone deserves the opportunity to experience the joy of being led by a great leader. That's how it works. And whenever, I promise you this, anybody who's listening, and I'm sure in your career and in the great work you do now as a speaker and a coach, right? That there are leaders in your life that you remember because you experienced that joy. And there are units that you led and you remember, and they remember you because they experienced that joy. That's the meaning. That's what I'm talking about. When we talk about meaningful missions, becoming the mission's voice, You can have all the processes, all the SOPs, you can have everything in place. But if it doesn't have meaning, what are you really going to feel?
Yeah. What's the point? What's the point, man? Jeez. Alex, this is awesome, dude. I love the work you're doing and you're so great. We'll put all the links if you want to get a hold of Alex, talk more about his coaching and Lead Without Fear, or, definitely grab him up for your next event with your team, whether it's a retreat or a conference. The message and the delivery is just, second to none. So awesome work, Alex. It was great talking with you today, bro. Thanks for being on.
Hey, it was an honor. Like I told you, I follow you. And you know what's interesting? The motto, you know what it was for the 302nd Training Squadron when I was a commander?
What's that?
Second to none.
Second to none. Hell yeah. Awesome, brother. All right, man. Well, you take care, dude. Keep up your good work.
I appreciate you. Thanks, brother.